One late night in Paris, Driss is driving his employer Philippe through the city. As sitting in traffic becomes too annoying, Driss violates the speed limit and begins driving very fast, evading other cars and ignoring traffic signs. The police start to pursue him as a result, and Driss bets €100 that he can escape with them. But after driving beneath a bridge, the police finally catch up with him by ambushing them from both sides. But Driss doesn't appear very concerned, and this time he stakes €200 that he can arrange for an escort for them. As the police force him out of the car, he begins acting strangely, acting as though Philippe is unable to move, and tells the officers that he was driving Philippe to the hospital. When the cops approach Philippe, they witness him convulsing, which is also an act, and they also discover the wheelchair inside the truck as evidence. The police pardon Driss for exceeding the speed limit because it was an emergency, and offer to accompany him to the hospital. Driss plays September by Earth, Wind and Fire to celebrate winning the bet, and when they get at their destination, he enjoys a cigarette with Philippe as soon as the police leave. Driss promises to handle everything and drives them away just as the medical staff arrives. This relationship started several months ago. Philippe, a racist billionaire, and his helper Magali are conducting interviews to find him a new carer, but things aren't going well because all applicants have extremely standard or odd replies to their interview questions. But they are startled when Driss barges in, disregarding the fact that it isn't nearly his time, since he only needs some paperwork signed stating that they won't hire him so he can receive unemployment benefits. He's blunt and a touch disrespectful, even hitting on Magali, but Philippe finds him humorous and invites him back the next day to sign his documents. Driss returns to his humble neighborhood house and tries to take a bath as all of his younger siblings disturb him, only getting to finish in time owing to his elder sister Mina, who is more responsible. While waiting for his mother, he sneaks through the window and spots his brother Adama stepping out of a strange car. When the boy enters the house, he just states he was at school and leaves after getting his bag, making Driss even more certain that he's up to no good. As his mother comes in the evening, he gives her a Fabergé egg he stole and tells her he's been on vacation when she asks. But she is not pleased to see him because he was missing for 6 months and didn't call, and now he has popped out of nowhere as if her home were a hotel. She throws him out and warns him not to return because she is so fed up with all of his lies and she has other kids to take care of. Driss spends the evening speaking with several neighbors while smoking and eating some goodies. The following day, Driss returns to Philippe's house for his paperwork, and he is greeted by Yvonne, the housekeeper, who shows him around and informs him about Philippe's daily routine. She also shows him the room he would have for himself, complete with his own bathroom. Driss can't help but stare at the bathtub before being pulled to Philippe, who not only gives the signed sheet of paper but also a job opportunity. Driss accepts the 1-month trial, and Philippe bets he won't survive 2 weeks. After bringing his things to his room, Driss is taught how to take care of Philippe. He has to learn how to put him in the wheelchair, keep his legs active, and assist him with bathing and getting dressed. Things get unpleasant when Driss learns that he must put on some high stockings and even clean his butt after Philippe uses the restroom. But despite his protests and vows to refuse, he eventually accepts those duties as part of his work. Later that evening, while eating a snack on the roof, he is disturbed by Philippe's daughter Alyssa and her boyfriend Bastien, who are searching for a private location to make out, and he kicks both of them out after refusing to share his beer. Driss soon adapts to Philippe's daily routine, even if he makes some rookie mistakes, such as passing the phone to Philippe instead of putting it on his ear or forgetting the baby monitor while taking a bath. He also learns how to categorize his mail into separate folders. He opens most of the letters for Philippe, but there are a few of private ones that he isn't permitted to see. When he finds a leaflet offering female escorts, he decides to keep it instead of tossing it away, as Philippe suggests. Even though his new life is busy, Driss still makes time for fun. He keeps attempting to make out with Magali and occasionally invites escorts to join him in bed. One morning, when Yvonne approaches him in his room to chastise him for being late, she discovers some potentially deadly items in his backpack but says nothing about them at the time. Driss' job today is to drive Philippe about, but he refuses to put him in the back of a truck as if he were luggage. Instead, he puts him in one of the luxury cars that are rarely used. Philippe, who first feels this isn't appropriate and argues they should be pragmatic, quickly becomes thrilled about the idea of a faster, less boring journey, while Yvonne remains disapproving. When they attempt to get out, a neighbor is already parked there, violating the warning notice posted on the door. Driss doesn't waste any time in pursuing the man, grabbing him by the front of his shirt and yelling at him until he moves the car. His deeds impress Philippe, but Yvonne disapproves once again. The two visit a museum where Philippe intends to purchase a work of art that Driss believes is worthless of the money because it is only a red splotch on the painting. Following that, Philippe meets with a relative who informs him that everyone is concerned about Driss since he is aggressive. He has also learned that he is a former criminal, but Philippe doesn't care because Driss doesn't feel sorry for him and enjoys making jokes with him. After another failed attempt at hitting on Magali, Driss has dinner with Yvonne in the kitchen while listening to Philippe dictate a letter to Magali. Yvonne switches off the baby monitor, saying it's a private talk, and starts explaining what's happening. The letters Philippe wouldn't allow Driss see were from a woman named Eleanor, with whom he is pen friends. Yet he has never really met Eleanor. Their communication is just through letters. Speaking of love, Driss taunts Yvonne about the glances the gardener gives her before going to bed. He's attempting to fall asleep when the baby monitor starts making strange noises. Philippe is having problems breathing, not being capable to ignore him even if he tries. Driss goes to his room and gently guides him through the attack with soothing words and a wet cloth to wipe his face. Philippe ultimately nods off, but a few minutes later, he wakes up once more, saying he needs air. This time, Driss doesn't think twice before transferring Philippe to the wheelchair, wrapping him in blankets, and taking him for a stroll by the river. Philippe hasn't seen Paris at night in a long time, and he's feeling better for it. He informs Driss that the effects of the medication are limited, and that he occasionally feels phantom pain. As they spot some girls going by, Philippe admits that he isn't capable of clapping a woman due of his position, but he can get some enjoyment by having his ears massaged because they are sensitive zones. As the phantom pain reappears, Driss shares one of his joints with Philippe, who is hesitant at first but eventually falls in love with it. Following that, they head to a restaurant where they laugh and eat while Philippe decides to tell them more about his story. His wife and he met while they were both students, and soon after they were wed, she had 5 miscarriages and was diagnosed with a severe, incurable illness. They adopted Alyssa at that point. Philippe has always liked speed, competitiveness, and extreme sports. A paraglider provided him all of those things. Bad weather caused him to crash and shatter his spine while paragliding, yet he still believes his greatest handicap isn't the chair, but life without his wife. Following some more conversation, Philippe recalls the time and realizes that Driss has successfully completed his 1-month trial and is now officially employed. But he must first return the Fabergé egg he took since it was a gift from his wife. She gave him one every year, and he has precisely 25, reflecting their years together. The following day, Driss approaches Mina as she is leaving school. She is a little angry that he hasn't responded to her messages other than to urge her to look for the egg, and she also informs him that the police have been calling their house. He then goes to see Adama, who admits that he was caught to be smuggling 30 grams. Driss offers to take Adama to lunch, but Adama declines and instead boards the same strange car as before. Later, Driss is permitted to be present as Philippe dictates his letter to Magali on behalf of Eleanor. He believes Philippe should be more forthright, and that this flowery writing is quite dull. He's also perplexed that this has been going on for 6 months and that they've never exchanged images. When he discovers her phone number on one of the letters, he interprets it as a sign and calls her, forcing Philippe to pick up the phone and finally talk to her outside of the written word. Since their talk goes so well, Philippe calls her frequently now, even before he and Driss go to the opera, where Driss giggles and makes fun of the clothes. The next day, Driss persuades Philippe to agree to a photo exchange with Eleanor and selects a photo of him sitting in a wheelchair. Later, as he is painting, Alyssa barges into his room to ask for smokes and taunts him for attempting to be artistic. He becomes upset and throws her out before going to meet Philippe, who is now requesting that Yvonne change the selected image with one of him when he wasn't paralyzed. She hides the image within the escort file just as Driss bursts in, complaining about Alyssa and telling Philippe he needs to discipline her, which Yvonne agrees with. Philippe agrees to speak with her, but is taken aback when Driss reveals that he has been painting. The time goes by, and Philippe and Driss' friendship deepens. Driss takes him outside to play in the snow and also takes him running. Philippe buys him his first suit and scolds his daughter, all while Driss listens in via baby monitor. Driss exhibits his first picture to Magali after finishing it, but she smacks him away when he attempts to kiss her. Yet, Philippe says he will make an effort to sell the artwork since he enjoys it. The two of them like spending time together and doing fun things like sharing weed, driving faster cars, and even hiring prostitutes. When Philippe's birthday finally arrives, he isn't very excited. Every year, he seems startled that they're hosting a celebration and has to meet with all these relatives who only come to visit him on the day to make sure he's still alive. Philippe says that it will all be quite dull. While he and the guests enjoy some live classical music, Driss searches for Alyssa, who is crying in her room after having taken some of Yvonne's pills, which won't kill her as she expected. She's upset since Bastien dumped her and called her a tart, so she begs Driss to talk to the guy, which he agrees to do for a fee. Meanwhile, Philippe shows Driss artwork to a relative and convinces him to buy it for 11,000 euros. Driss returns to the dining room and speaks with Yvonne, who informs him that Magali is in a relationship with someone named Fred, but things are difficult at the moment, which gives Driss hope. As the celebration winds down, Philippe forces Driss to listen to some of classical music's most important pieces, but all he can do is laugh. Once the band finishes, he comes his iPod and plays Boogie Wonderland by Earth, Wind and Fire before dancing in the middle of the floor. He is a fantastic dancer, and Philippe enjoys watching him persuade the other party members to dance with him as well. Later, while putting Philippe to bed, Driss reads Eleanor's most recent letter to him. She sends him a photo of herself, which reveals that she is quite gorgeous and suggests that they meet up when she visits Paris the following week. When the date finally arrives, Philippe is given a ton of clothing options by Yvonne and Driss before they settle on the ideal one. Meanwhile, because Yvonne will be driving Philippe to the date, Driss spends his day off visiting Bash and threatening him until the lad agrees to apologize to Eliza and bring her croissants every day. He also asks him to fix his hair. He then pays a quick visit to his mother at work, but merely to observe her from a distance. At the restaurant, Yvonne and Philippe are waiting for Eleanor, who is very late. Philippe gives up after an hour of waiting, asks Driss to drive him away, and then exits the restaurant without realizing Eleanor is also arriving at the same moment. Philippe brings Driss in his own jet that night and gives him the money he received for selling the painting, making him extremely pleased. They make it to the countryside the next morning, and Philippe decides to go paragliding, bringing Driss with him as well. Driss doesn't want to be involved, but after first freaking out, he really finds enjoyment in the experience. As they get home, Adama is waiting for Driss and is chastised when he notices the scars on his face. Adama would still not tell Driss what's occurring in his life though, so Driss has him wait in his room while he phones Mina to tell her not to worry and goes to put Philippe to bed. But Philippe hasn't yet fallen asleep. After forcing Driss to gaze at a picture with him, he asks him about his family. At first, Driss resists, but soon yields. It turns out that legally, Adama isn't his brother, and his parents, who are actually his aunt and uncle, aren't his parents. They brought him from Senegal when he was 8 years old since they couldn't have children. His original name is Bakary Bassari, but because other children had that name, they nicknamed him Idris, which became Driss. His aunt mysteriously became pregnant one day, and after his uncle died, there were other men and more children. Similarly to how Driss had spoken to him about Alyssa, Philippe points out that Adama need discipline. Therefore, he fires Driss so he can be with his family since he cannot spend his entire life caring for an elderly guy. The following morning, when Bastien has delivered his daily croissant while sporting a nicer hairstyle, Driss packs his luggage and prepares to go. Magali arrives to say him goodbyes, and when Driss makes one final attempt at luring her, she introduces him to Fred, which is short for Frederic. It turns out that Magali isn't interested in males, and Driss gives up right there. On his way out of the home, he gives the baby monitor back to Yvonne and taunts her for having lied to him about Magali simply to screw with him. In return, she sends him the escort file he had started, and he's unhappy to find the photograph he had picked is hidden there. Driss throws the file, but he keeps the photograph for himself. As he gets outside, he discovers another car blocking the entry, so he asks him to move even though he no longer works there. Adama calls him out on it, and Driss responds that it's a matter of principle. A few hours later, the two boys go pick up their mother at the station. While back at the home, Philippe is having his first meal together with his new caretaker, who is stuffy and dull, and Philippe chooses to leave him without even taking a bite. No one is there to chastise him because Yvonne is out on a date with the gardener. Once more, hanging out with his old pals, he tells the men from the strange car to stop bothering Adama. When he goes to an interview for which he does not have enough experience, he manages to impress the employer by referring to himself as pragmatic and utilizing all of the art knowledge he gained while working for Philippe. As a result, he is hired as a driver. Philippe is still in a bad mood and continues to reject his new caretaker. One night, he refuses to let anybody in the home aid him with his phantom pain, so Yvonne contacts Driss and begs him to come over. That's how they find themselves in the situation from the beginning, with the cops chasing after them first and escorting them to the hospital later. Following that little adventure, Driss takes Philippe to the seaside, where he is able to relax after seeing the ocean. Later, Driss trims Philippe's excessive beard and brings him to a restaurant for lunch, but he leaves early because Philippe will have company today from someone else. Driss wishes him luck and eventually returns his egg before departing. Philippe begins to worry about being alone until he discovers who his date is, Eleanor, who is overjoyed to see him and doesn't mind the chair at all. The real Philippe now lives in Morocco. He has remarried and has 2 daughters. The real Driss owns his own business and is married with 3 children. Even now, the friendship between the two guys is still quite strong.